Thank you very much for being here. In this talk, I'd like to show you a little summary of the most important thing about working with Jest as a testing framework and how cool it is to add testing library. I don't have much time, so very quickly, I'm going to tell you the most important things about Jest and then my favorite part, that is testing library. I am Ari. I am a nurse and educational psychologist from Venezuela. Now I'm based in Madrid. I'm working as a front-end developer for almost 2 years. And right now I'm working at Singular and I'm really happy. And let's see, how to start. We need to add a .test or .spec in the name of the file. And in this way, Jest will know which files have tests to run the tests. So there are two ways to organize them. First option is all the tests inside a folder that is called tests, and all the tests is going to be there inside that folder, or the other way, each component is going to have his own folder, and inside that folder is going to be his test. The second option is in the right side. Okay, let's see how to write tests. Test should be grouped for a common context, and that should be this describe. And inside the describe is going to be the test. Could be one test or could be more tests. You can use the word test or it. There is no difference, okay? And you should write a description about what the test does. And the more descriptive, the better, because it's going to work as a documentation and it's going to help you with the feedback in the terminal when you run the tests. So inside the test, we can have like a AAA to arrange all the tests, and it's going to be arrange, act, and assertion. Arrange is where you set up the test. For example, you can put the entry params before the method you want to test. In the act is where the test is going to do the things. For example, execute a function with arguments. And in the set, you're going to verify that the result is what you're expecting. When you're learning, it's very, very useful to prepare the test like this example with arrange, act, and assert. And it's going to be more clear for you for organize all the tests. Okay, let's talk about mocking. Mocking is to have a dependency or a fake function that accomplishes the same contract that the original one and to paste data in a deterministic way. But what is this determinism? Determinism is very important here because it's like when you give some particular input, it would always produce the same output. And our tests have to be deterministic because the more confident you are about them, is the better. And I think in the end, this is why we do testing, because of the confidence. And well, going back to mocking, let's talk about the spy. The spy is this guest.fn parentheses, and we use it for functions that are passed as a param, and we can check that if the function has been called, has been not called, or has been called with some arguments. So this function doesn't do anything because it is a spy. It is not the original function. That's why we're mocking it. It only allows you to check what I told you, that is, if it has been called, for example, in this example. Okay, then we have the stubs, and we write it like guest.spy_on. And I know it could be really tricky because there is a word spy on it, but actually it doesn't matter how do you call them, because in the end, we all call mocks to everything. And in the important things is that you know that they exist and how to use them. In this case, the get method from Axios model, we are going to mock that get method. And in this case, it's a promise, and we can check if the promise was resolved. And in the opposite way, we can check if the mock was rejected. Remember that we don't have to test always the happy path, like mock resolve value, But we can check too the opposite way, that is mock rejected value. And I want to take the chance here to tell you that here we're using async await example, but there's another way to write tests of promises. We can use then, and with this done callback, we can put it here. And in this case, Jest is going to wait until the promise is resolved. Okay, let's talk about the snapshot. The snapshot is a way to test what is rendered, okay? It's like a screenshot. And it's used like this to match snapshot. So this snapshot is going to, when you run the test, Jest is going to create this folder that is called snapshots. And inside, there are going to be all the snapshots. And it's going to compare the code that is rendered with this snapshot. And if it doesn't match, the test is going to fail. So if you change your code, of course, the test is going to fail, but there is a way you can update the snapshot. For example, when you run the test, it's going to fail. And in the terminal, you will have something like this. And you can press U or I to update that snapshot with the new code. And that it's going to be a green test. Okay, and I want to finish this part of Jest talking about the cleanup. When we're using mocks, we should clean them after the test is run. So we do this because we want our test to be independent. So there are two ways to do this cleanup. The first of all is after each test, we need to clean them with this jest.restore all mocks. But we have to do this in each test or in this method that is after each, because it's going to execute after each test. Or we have another way. Here in our guest.config file, we can put this restore mocks to true. And by default, it is false. But if we turn it to true, it's going to do it automatically. And you don't have to write restore all mocks in each test or in after each in each file. So, okay, I want to be honest. I usually get really, really overwhelmed when I know there is a new framework, a new technology, a new tool, whatever, especially when I'm really comfortable with the one I'm using right now. So this is what happened to me with Jest. I learned testing with Jest. I was really, really overwhelmed because it was really hard. I didn't understand. I was like, I hate you. I'm crying. But suddenly my tests were green and I was super, super excited. And now I love Jest. I love testing. So I'm telling you this because when we knew there was another testing framework, it was called Testing Library, I was like, something new. Well, no for me. I want to stay with Jest. I don't want to learn something new because it's going to be hard, but I gave it a try, and guess what? Testing Library is a plus. You don't have to stop using Jest. They can work together as a super great combo. It's not hard at all to understand. It's really simple. It's really intuitive. And I made this logo for them working together. And I think it's really easy to understand because we should focus on the user interaction, and we abstract ourselves from the implementation. So it forces us to test from the user's point of view, and will give us more confidence because we are thinking as the user. And good news, it is agnostic to any framework. You can use it with JavaScript vanilla, React, Vue, Angular, whatever. So what is the difference? Why we need to add testing library to Jest? For example, the user is not going to look for an attribute that is called title or whatever. The user is going to expect that in the screen appears some text or some button. So we should find selectors and assertions that talk to us like the user would talk. So it's about the component that is rendered. And for example, if we have a helper, we have a util, we're going to do Jest. We're going to use Jest like itself. And for the components, we're going to use testing library. Okay, testing library has some other libraries that are going to help us. For example, this one is Guestdog. This Guestdog, with this one, we're going to have this object screen. And now we can read, for example, the text of an element that is on the screen. And that's why here in this example, I'm using screen.getByText. But imagine this text, for example, is inside a strong tag. This tag is not reachable. So the getByText is not the best option. So let's see why. Let's see the priority of using these queries with testing library. The priority list, this one, is taken from the testing library documentation, and it says that the first options are these. The first best option is get by role. And what is the role? HTML element has an assigned role, so the screen readers can read the components that are on the screen. And that means that if we use this get by role, we are also testing accessibility. It is not an accessibility test itself, like with Axe, for example, but it's going to force us to write semantic HTML. And with this, I'm like, I love your testing library. And another option, the second one, get by label text, is good for accessibility too. And for example, if we have a form with many inputs, we can get them with get by label text. And in this case, again, it's good for accessibility because it's going to force us to write inputs with labels. Please don't write inputs without labels. And as you see, as I told you before, get by text is the last option about queries accessibility. In the second option, we have semantic queries. So we have get by alt text. Again, it's going to force us to write alternative text to images. And in the last option of these semantic queries, we have get by title. The title attribute is not consistently read for screen readers, so it's not visible for screen readers. And get text by ID, remember that we are going to think like the user, and the user is not going to look for an ID, and he doesn't know there is an ID. So this is the last option. So let's see. So far, I have told you about get by role, get by text, get by label text. There are another queries, for example. Okay, get by is used for elements that are already in the DOM. And the other query is query by. Instead of get by text, we are going to use query by text. And this is good for elements that are not present yet. And the other query we can use is find by text, for example, and is used for asynchronous code. Okay, let's talk about the events here in testing library. There is another library inside this one, which is user event. User event is really cool because this reminds me a little bit to Cypress, and I don't have time to talk about Cypress, but using testing library and Cypress, it is a really, really great combo too. So in this case, the user event is going to imitate the user behavior. It's going to simulate this event in case, for example, type. First, it's going to, with get label by text, it's going to look for the input, and then it's going to imitate the user behavior, typing the text inside that input. And then with the event click, it's the same. It's going to look for this button, and then it's going to click that button as the user would. And last but not least, a few days ago, Lisette, a friend of mine, posted a tweet sharing this tip, and I didn't know. So I had to add it to this talk because I think it is awesome. You can configure these throw suggestions to true because by default it is false. And the library is going to help you to write better tests. Like this message that is here in the bottom of the slide is going to tell you, oh, we have a better query to use. You can try this, whatever. So I think it's awesome because maybe you are writing tests and you think you're doing it super great, but then the library is going to help you to do it actually better. So this is the super combo Jest and Testing Library, and this is my logo. I made me with my super designer skills. I really love it because I think it teaches us to think like the user and to do accessible webs and to write semantic HTML. And I think that's really, really important. So I hope you liked it, as I do. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, JS World, for giving me this opportunity. And of course, thank you, Singular, for supporting me. By the way, you can join us. We are really nice people. So thank you, everyone, and bye.